May 10th, 2002, just past midnight. Atmore, Alabama. Inside Holman Correctional Facility. The air is dead quiet. Guards move in silence. A woman walks through a narrow corridor toward a small, brightly lit room. She does not shake. She does not cry. She does not speak. In the center of that room sits a wooden chair, painted yellow, bolted to the floor, leather straps hanging open, waiting. Her name is Lynda Lyon Block, 54 years old. She asked for no last meal. She prepared no final words. She showed nothing. Not fear, not anger, not regret. Just a blank, hollow stare that witnesses would later struggle to describe. She was a library chairwoman, a Cub Scout den mother, a woman who once spent her weekends shelving books and rescuing abused animals. And she was minutes away from becoming the first woman executed in Alabama in 45 years, and the very last person to die in that yellow chair forever. But here is the question nobody could answer. What turns a community volunteer into a cop killer? Stay with us, because the answer will shock you. Welcome back to the Execution Archive. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We cover the cases that never leave you. Let's get into it. Before we talk about what happened in that parking lot, you need to know who was lost. Sergeant Roger Lamar Motley Jr. was 39 years old. He worked for the Opelika Police Department in Alabama. People who knew him on the force described him the same way every time. Calm, steady, reliable. He was not the kind of officer who looked for trouble. He was the kind who showed up, did the job right, and went home. And going home mattered to Roger Motley. He had a wife. He had children who ran around the yard on weekends. He was a family man in every sense of the word. On the morning of October 4th, 1993, he started his shift the same way he always did. No reason to think anything was different. His patrol took him through the streets of Opelika, a regular day, a regular route. Then a bystander flagged him down. A simple welfare concern. A child spotted alone in a car. The kind of call officers handled dozens of times without incident. Court records confirmed that Roger Motley had done nothing wrong. He followed protocol to the letter, and it cost him his life. What the woman who flagged him down could not have known was that the two people sitting in that car had already decided that laws did not apply to them, and that any officer who came close was fair game. To understand what happened in that parking lot, you have to understand who Lynda Lyon Block really was, and how far she had traveled from the woman her neighbors thought they knew. Lynda was born on February 8, 1948, in Orlando, Florida. Her father, Francis Stephen Lyon, known as Frank, died when she was just 10 years old. That loss left a mark. Her mother, Barreline Elizabeth Owen, was later described by Lynda in counseling records as harsh and emotionally damaging. Constant criticism, belts across the legs, words that cut deeper than the physical pain. At 18, she walked out and did not look back. She waited tables. She worked retail. She kept moving. By the 1980s, she had settled in Key West, Florida. In 1983, she married Carl Block, a much older man with a military pension. The following year, she had a son, but the marriage did not hold. By December 1991, the divorce was final. She left with her child and started over. What she built after that looked impressive from the outside. She served as secretary for the Humane Society. She chaired the Friends of the Library group for 2 years. She was a Cub Scout den mother. She published her own political magazine called Liberatus. She helped promote a local mayoral candidate. Neighbors knew her as driven, giving, and passionate about opera. Then came George Sibley Jr. Born in 1942, Sibley was quiet and kept a low profile. He and Lynda never officially married. Theirs was a common law partnership built on shared beliefs, and those beliefs were becoming dangerous. Together, they fell deep into sovereign citizen ideology. They renounced their United States citizenship. They burned their passports. They shredded their driver's licenses and identification documents. They filed paperwork declaring themselves free persons, entirely outside government authority. Court records document a steady and growing hostility toward anyone in uniform. To neighbors, they looked like two politically passionate adults, but behind that front door, something far more dangerous was taking shape. By the early 1990s, Lynda Lyon Block and George Sibley Jr. were no longer just passionate about their beliefs. They were living them out, dangerously. They had fully rejected state authority, every part of it. To them, police officers were not public servants. They were illegitimate agents of a government they refused to recognize. Court records confirm that both Block and Sibley carried firearms routinely, not occasionally, not for sport, at all times. Block's magazine, Liberatus, had changed too. What started as general commentary on rights and freedoms had hardened into something else entirely, explicit anti-government doctrine, printed and distributed by hand. Then came August 1992. Block and Sibley broke into the home of Carl Block, Lynda's 79-year-old former husband. According to court records, Carl was restrained. Then Lynda grabbed a knife from the counter and stabbed him once in the chest. The motive was a property dispute. They wanted the deed to his home. Carl survived, but the law caught up with them. Both were charged with aggravated assault. They pled no contest. Then they skipped their sentencing date entirely and disappeared. From that moment, they were fugitives. No license plates on the car, no identification on their bodies, no intention of answering to any court, anywhere. And traveling with them through all of it was Lynda's son, 9 years old. They had already proven they would use a knife over a property deed. The next confrontation would be deadlier, and this time, the target would be wearing a badge. This case did not involve a network of plotters. No hired guns, no secret meetings, no outside help. Block and Sibley operated completely alone, just the two of them, moving through the country as fugitives, with a 9-year-old boy in the back seat. Their so-called planning was never tactical. There was no target selected in advance, no route mapped out for a killing. What drove them was ideology, a deeply held belief that the government had no power over them, and that they had the right to resist it by any means necessary. Court records confirm that both Block and Sibley carried loaded weapons throughout their time on the run. This was not preparation for a specific attack. It was simply how they lived, armed, always. They were not heading to Opelika, Alabama to kill anyone. They were running from Florida, fleeing the aggravated assault warrant that had been issued after the stabbing of Carl Block. Their destination was unclear. Their state of mind was not. Hostile, paranoid, wound tight. The boy traveling with them would later become the detail that changed everything, because a stranger in a parking lot noticed him and made a phone call. They did not plan to kill Roger Motley. But court records make one thing devastatingly clear. They were absolutely prepared to. And when the moment came, neither one hesitated. Before we get to that parking lot, if this case has you gripped, hit like right now. It helps more people find this channel. Okay. October 4th, 1993, Opelika, Alabama. Here is what happened. October 4th, 1993, Opelika, Alabama. It is the middle of the afternoon. Block, Sibley, and the 9-year-old boy pull into the Walmart parking lot. Nothing about their arrival stands out. Just another car in a busy lot. Block steps out. She walks to a payphone nearby and makes a call. Sibley stays in the car with the boy. That is when a woman walking through the parking lot glances at the vehicle. She looks at the boy in the back seat. According to court records, the child mouthed the words, "Help me." She did not walk away. She found Sergeant Roger Motley, who was on patrol close by, and she told him what she saw. Motley drove over, stepped out of his cruiser, walked toward the car, calm, measured, professional. He leaned toward the window and asked Sibley for his driver's license. Sibley refused, said he did not carry one, did not recognize Motley's authority to ask. Motley asked him to step out of the vehicle. Sibley refused again. What happened next took only seconds. Court records confirm that Sibley drew his weapon first and fired at Motley. The shot connected, but Motley did not go down. He drew his own firearm and returned fire, striking Sibley in the arm. Motley then fell back and took cover behind his patrol car, reaching for his radio. Across the parking lot, Block was still at the payphone when the shots rang out. She did not run for cover. She did not drop to the ground. She hung up the phone, reached into her bag, and pulled out a Glock 9mm. Then she ran, not away from the gunfire, but straight toward it. Motley was crouched behind his vehicle, focused on Sibley. He did not see her coming. Block came up from behind. She fired multiple rounds. One bullet entered Motley's back and tore through his chest, shredding vital organs on its way out. He collapsed onto the asphalt. Blood spread out beneath him. Shoppers screamed. Carts were abandoned. Cars sped out of the lot in every direction. Block and Sibley grabbed the boy, jumped back into the car, and drove away at full speed. Responding officers found Motley on the ground. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital. He died on the operating table. The chest wound left him no chance. Police tracked the car into wooded areas outside Opelika. Block and Sibley pulled over and barricaded themselves. Car doors open, guns drawn, the 9-year-old boy still inside with them. Negotiators worked the scene for 4 hours. Eventually, Block and Sibley lowered their weapons. They surrendered without firing again. The boy was taken into protective services. Roger Motley was 39 years old. He had done everything right. Court records confirm he never drew his weapon first. He never got to go home. At the station, the process was cold and mechanical. Block and Sibley were fingerprinted, photographed, and booked. Medics treated the gunshot wound on Sibley's arm. He walked into custody on his own 2 feet. Block was described by officers as completely expressionless. Through fingerprinting, through booking, through every step of the process. Not a flicker of emotion. The 9-year-old boy was placed in temporary protective care. He was later moved in with relatives. Inside the car, investigators found remnants of burned identification documents in the trunk. Florida warrants were confirmed for both Block and Sibley, connected directly to the aggravated assault charge from the stabbing of Carl Block. In the interrogation room, both leaned on the same defense immediately. Government agents had no authority over them. The officer had reached for his weapon first. They were protecting themselves. They called it self-defense from the very first moment. Across town, at the hospital, Roger Motley's wife was told her husband was gone. Officers returned his badge to her. His children were told their father was not coming home. While that family broke apart in a hospital waiting room, Block was already preparing her next move. And it was not remorse. It was a legal argument that would stun the entire courtroom. Back at the Walmart parking lot, investigators worked the scene carefully. Shell casings were collected from the asphalt. Skid marks were documented. Blood evidence was photographed and logged. Every detail was recorded. The autopsy delivered a finding that removed all doubt. The bullet that killed Roger Motley entered from behind and exited through his chest, destroying vital organs on its path. That bullet came from Block's Glock 9mm. Court records confirm her fingerprints were on the weapon. Sibley's shot, fired from the front, had been stopped by Motley's protective vest. It never reached him. The woman who flagged Motley down gave a full formal statement. Her account matched the physical evidence exactly. Multiple shoppers who had been in the lot that afternoon also came forward, providing witness testimony that confirmed the sequence of the shooting. Florida records were pulled. The aggravated assault warrant from the Carl Block stabbing was confirmed for both defendants. Court records established clearly they were fugitives at the time of the killing. Social workers took a separate account from the 9-year-old boy. He had watched everything from the back seat. Court records note that Block and Sibley attempted no alibi. Their entire defense rested on 2 claims: self-defense and the argument that the traffic stop was unlawful to begin with. There was no long investigation, no cold case, no years of waiting for a break. Block and Sibley were caught, the same day Roger Motley died. What built the case against them was not a single dramatic discovery. It was the weight of everything stacking up together. Ballistics confirmed that the fatal round came from Block's Glock 9mm. Independent witness testimony from multiple shoppers placed her as the shooter who approached from behind. The bystander's formal statement demolished any claim that Motley's stop was unlawful, and the burned identification documents found in the trunk of their car told investigators exactly who they were dealing with: two people who had been running from the law long before that parking lot. Block was formally charged with capital murder for firing the shot that killed a law enforcement officer. Sibley was charged separately. When Block was told what she was facing, she did not ask for a lawyer. Instead, she declared that the court had no jurisdiction over her, arguing that Alabama had never properly rejoined the Union after the Civil War and therefore had no legal standing. That argument would follow her all the way to the execution chamber. The trial opened at Lee County Courthouse, Alabama, in 1994. Lynda Lyon Block walked in and made an immediate decision that stunned the room. She waived her right to a lawyer. She would represent herself. Court records confirm she had already filed her own paperwork arguing that the court had no jurisdiction over her, the same argument she had made at arrest. She stood at the defense table in jail khaki and told the court that Alabama's readmission to the Union after the Civil War had been procedurally flawed. Therefore, in her view, no Alabama court could legally try her for anything. The prosecution ignored the argument and focused on the facts. They laid out the sequence, step by step. The bystander's welfare concern, Motley's lawful approach to the vehicle, Sibley's refusal to cooperate and his decision to fire first, Block's deliberate movement from the payphone toward the gunfire, and the fatal bullet, confirmed by ballistics as hers. Shoppers who had ducked behind carts that afternoon took the stand. The bystander who flagged Motley testified. Responding officers gave their accounts. Block cross-examined witnesses herself. Her questions were pointed, but they could not touch the physical evidence. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On December 21, 1994, they returned their verdict: guilty of capital murder. Their sentencing recommendation was death, a 10-2 vote. The judge accepted it without hesitation. Death by electrocution. Block showed no reaction. She later wrote in formal court filings, "I will not participate in this corrupt system." She filed no meaningful appeals. The Alabama Supreme Court reviewed the case independently in 1999 and upheld the sentence without changes. Sibley received his own death sentence in separate proceedings. She had every legal avenue available to her. She rejected every single one. And what she said about that decision, from inside her cell, is something you will not forget. After sentencing, Block was transferred to Julia Tutwiler Prison for Women in Wetumpka, Alabama. Inmate Z575. A narrow cell, a steel bunk, a small window. She would spend 8 years there. She requested opera cassette tapes and played them during the quiet hours. She continued writing anti-government letters from her cell. The same beliefs, unchanged, unshaken. Amnesty International documented her case, sent representatives to the prison, and protested outside the gates. Block met with them through glass partitions. She listened, but she never softened her position and never engaged with the appeals process. On May 10, 2002, she was transferred to Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama, where the execution chamber was located. In the visiting room, she met with a spiritual advisor and a small group of friends. She shook hands. There was no dramatic farewell. She declined a last meal. The tray was brought and left untouched. She prepared no final statement. At midnight, guards walked her to the chamber. She was strapped into Yellow Mama, Alabama's bright yellow wooden electric chair fitted with leather restraints. Witnesses took their seats behind the glass. At 12:01 in the morning, the switch was thrown. 2,050 volts surged through her body for 20 seconds. Then 250 volts for 100 seconds. Witnesses saw her body tense. Steam rose from the sponge fixed to her head and the electrode attached to her left leg. Alabama Police Commissioner Mike Haley was present that night. He later told reporters, "She never displayed any emotion. Her stare was a very blank stare, an emotionless stare. At 12:10 in the morning, she was pronounced dead. Lynda Lyon Block became the first woman executed in Alabama since Rhonda Bell Martin in 1957. She was also the last person ever executed in Alabama's electric chair. Yellow Mama was retired after that night and never used again. George Sibley Jr. was executed on August 4, 2005, at Holman Correctional Facility by lethal injection. He was pronounced dead at 6:19 in the evening. His final words were, "I forgive those who have wronged me." Roger Motley's family never recovered what was taken from them on October 4, 1993. His wife carried his badge home from the hospital the night he died. His children grew up without their father in the yard on weekends. No verdict, no execution, no closure could give them back a single day. Block's son was 9 years old when he sat in that back seat and watched his world collapse. He was placed with relatives after the arrest. He grew up knowing his mother had been executed in an Alabama prison. 3 years later, he learned that George Sibley had followed her to the same institution. Block left behind no apology, no acknowledgement that Roger Motley's life had mattered. Her magazine, Liberatus, had championed freedom, rights, and personal sovereignty from its very first issue. In the end, the only sovereign choice she made was to die in that chair, rather than ask the system she despised for mercy. Alabama never used the electric chair again, but the questions this case raises have never gone away. At what point does an ideology stop being a belief and start being a weapon? How many warning signs have to stack up before the people around someone say, "This has gone too far"? Roger Motley left behind children who played in the yard on weekends. Lynda Block left behind a legacy that still fuels extremist movements today. One of them chose violence. The other never got a choice at all. What moment in this case hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments below. Was it the welfare check that set everything in motion? The 4-hour standoff with a child caught in the middle? Or something else entirely? Let me know. Hit like if this kept you watching. Subscribe for a new case every week. I will see you in the next one.